Let's be honest, most M&E contractors still relying on a handful of tactics to win work. Referrals, trade shows, a bit of outreach, and maybe a website designed over 10 years ago by an over-expensive agency. So what's the problem then? Most of these methods are either unpredictable, expensive, or slow. So slow they're practically useless. In this video, I'm going to rank 6 client acquisition tactics that I see in the M&E sector from worst to best. I'm not just giving opinions. We're scoring each one based on how much it typically costs to run, how long it takes before you see a return, and how predictable it is. Can you actually build a pipeline off this tactic, or are you gambling each month? I'll also break down the real-world numbers, why cold email looks cheap but ends up being expensive, why trade shows burn cash and still leave you chasing people, and why relying on referrals makes your growth rely purely on luck, like a roll of the dice, a gamble. And finally, I'll show you one strategy is helping M&E contractors bring in warm, pre-sold leads from decision makers without spending a penny on ads and without needing a sales team. If you're a serious supplier to the M&E sector or an M&E contractor and you want to win consistently in 2025 without wasting months testing the tactics, this breakdown will give you absolute clarity. Here we go then, guys. Here are the 6 client acquisition tactics that I'm about to review. The first things first, the cold outreach, email and cold calling. So what are the pros to this tactic? It's direct and measurable. It's also scalable with the right setup, the right sales teams, lead list and dialers. Of course, if you call 500 people and you book 2 meetings, you see clearly the return on meetings from this tactic. And in terms of emails, again, as I said, direct and measurable. So you can email out 500 of your ideal customer prospects. You can see straight away the amount of replies you get. You can easily quantifiably measure this tactic. So what's it best for? So the tactic is best for mass outreach when budget and volume capacity are in place and you know the specific niche audience you want to target. And you have the companies that are well trained in cold calling and you have the targeting spot on. So what are the cons of this method? The low trust and response rate, often below 3% with email and even lower with cold calling. High setup costs, the cost of training staff, hiring staff to carry out the phone calls in the first place, and the infrastructure setup required to make sure you don't get blacklisted when cold emailing. With cold emailing, you're easy to down in spam folders or ignored entirely, and it can give a bad impression on the services you offer. It doesn't suit the M&E sector, who really rely on relationship-first industries, as commonly shown through the other tactics we're going to mention later on. So what's my experience of the use of cold outreach and email? So I've never used cold outreach through telephone marketing myself. I have, however, looked into cold email campaigns. I don't recommend it. It simply doesn't align with how trust is built within the M&E sector. Dialing 60 prospects in an hour sounds impressive until you realise no one's actually listening. Cold outreach may work in other industries, but not in the M&E sector in my mind, because quite simply, people get frustrated when you're cold calling them. They won't answer back, and they end up viewing your brand and your service in a bad light. That's why cold calling for me is at the bottom of the list, as you can see here. Next up, paid ads. Here we have paid ads second tactic. You could do it through Google, LinkedIn, Meta, or all the other social media platforms. What are the pros of this tactic then? You can scale quickly with the right targeting, i.e. you can get eyeballs in front of the right audience. It's good for capturing high intent leads, especially for Google. Those who search for Google have a high intent, they know exactly what they're searching for, therefore they're much more likely to convert. And in specifically LinkedIn ads, there are an awful lot of campaign types to choose from LinkedIn. Thought leadership ads tend to work quite well with their really niche targeting mix you can get. Of course, as you know, you can target any of the many filters through Sales Navigator, and it enables you to really hone in and focus in on those exact audiences that you want to see your message. I would say thought leadership ads are quite good in the fact that they look very similar to organic posts. Therefore, you can always use your most impactful posts that have done so well organically and turn them into thought leadership ads. So what's it best for? Best for companies with validated funnels and proven positioning. In other words, it's best for companies that know exactly the right message and the right creative that suits the targeted audience depending where they are in the buyer journey. And your proven position, i.e. your messaging is dialed in. You know exactly what messages speak to what audience and when. It's also best for when you're ready to pour fuel on a fire that's already burning. In other words, your brand's already creating noise, you're getting a ready stream of warm leads. And if you really want to amplify the number of awareness and leads, then of course you could target a much larger audience and possibly get a higher return on investment. So what are the cons? It's expensive. Depending on the campaign type, you're targeting audience sizes. It can cost thousands of pounds, specifically when you're working in competitive keywords for Google Ad campaigns. There's a high skill barrier you need to know what you're doing. You need to make you need to make sure the copy lands correctly, the creative up to scratch and really speaks to the audience. You've clear optimized landing pages and your retargeting is all set up. You also need to make sure you have a dedicated person trained how to carry this out in-house, or you'll be paying a lot of money outsourcing this tactic. If your offer isn't clear, you'll burn cash quickly because of poor ad creative targeting that reflects that offer. And it doesn't really build trust with the marketplace unless it's targeted with content which is recognizable, content that you know has worked and landed well with your clients. So unless you've got a steady stream of organic posts and you build up trust in the audience already, then it wouldn't be worth spending money on ads. That's why ads is placed in the fifth position. Next up, having a website and making sure you're performing well in terms of your SEO. So, what are the pros of this tactic? It helps convert warm traffic, adds credibility when a prospect looks you up, i.e. if your website's up to date, you have social proof, you have case studies, easy to navigate, you're speaking to the exact pain points your prospects are facing. It can become a very long-term brand asset, especially if it's really hitting all the correct metrics in terms of SEO tasks needs to be completed, off page, on page, and of course, technical SEO. It's best for supporting other lead gen channels. So of course, if you're running email campaigns, other campaigns, your website can be a home for all the key resources and guides you can send your audience to. And also you can generate awareness from a relevant audience. So of course, if your SEO is dialed in, you'll be capturing search traffic from those who want to take out the services you offer. What are the cons? Well, sadly, the main M&E contractor suppliers that I've seen that have a website, unfortunately, they look like static brochures. So they're burning money in the pocket and doing zilch. In fact, most probably damaging the brand as it is. With poor user experience, outdated designs, and no clear conversion path, users jump on the page and often jump straight off it because they don't know where to go and how to navigate. SEO, if you outsource it, it can be costly. If you don't have the skills in-house, you'll have to outsource it. It can take time. However, if done correctly, in a structured strategy, it can take quicker than you think. However, it requires a finite set of skills. It doesn't generate demand, but it can capture it. SEO for me would be fourth on the list. Okay, just a quick one here. If you're watching this and thinking, we've been relying on some of these methods for years and still aren't getting consistent leads, this is exactly what I help M&E suppliers and contractors to fix. Whether you're creating customer attraction posts, improving your LinkedIn profile, or building a no-nonsense lead generation machine, which I'll touch on later about in the video, the goal is simple: turning your content into a real working pipeline. If that's something you want to explore, there's a link in the description. Feel free to book a quick chat and we'll see if we're the right fit. Next up on the list, trade shows and industry events. What are the pros? Strong face-to-face conversations. Many tier 1 and principal contractors still attend trade shows. You still be visible in front of the audience you wish to attract. As I said, useful for brand visibility and long-term positioning. Partnerships and collaborations can come across with trade shows. What is it best for? Building partnerships or brand authority? The more you get your face out there, visible to the rest of the market, the more likely you'll become remembered. What are the cons of this way then? Costly. Costs an awful lot to set up a stand. The time off-site can cost around 8 to 16 grand per event, which is an enormous amount of your budget to be wasted. You can't control who shows up, whether they're going to engage or not. You could be standing on a trade show for 8 hours and have 0 conversations. Any conversations you do have are not trackable, and the follow-up often fails. Your team being present means you're taking them away from the other day-to-day prospecting tasks that they would have done in the office. What's my experiences? So I've done trade shows before in the past for other B2B sectors. They look great, feel productive, they give you good photos, but the ROI is wildly unpredictable. Even if there are 5,000 people at the venue, how many are you actually going to target, and how many are the actual target buyers in that venue? How many really have serious conversations, and how many will follow up? I've seen companies send their best salesperson for a whole week only to spend money on the food and the razzmatazz around the event and end up with 0 leads and 0 conversations. That's just money down the drain. That sales team could have been in the office, closing referral deals and signing projects. That's why I'll put trade shows third on the list. They're good for brand visibility and can be brilliant if you have real conversations. They're hard to track and hard to measure. Referrals. Now, in the M&E sector, a subsection of the construction industry, referrals are still a huge way to generate leads. Often on these particular M&E projects or construction sites, you have multiple M&E contractors milling around. And if you do a good job for one contractor, your name will be shrouded in gold dust. And it's likely you'll be passed on through word of mouth to other contractors once they jump from site to site. So, The high trust method generate continual work, no resistance, free or very little cost. Of course, you're already doing the job itself, so the outlay is severely reduced. Excellent perform leads and repeat work. What's it best for? Retention and re-engagement. Contractors with strong established client bases will get to know you really quickly. What are the cons? Now, unfortunately, it's completely unpredictable. You may carry out fantastic work for the contractor, but it doesn't mean you'll be getting on the next Tier 1 or principal contractor's vetted vendor list. You can't scale or forecast it, so it's quite a gamble. And the quality of the referral leads depends on who's referring you in the first place and how much clout they have in the sector. So what's my experience of this? Referrals are brilliant when they happen, but they aren't something you can throw your hat on and rely on. They come when they come. I've worked with clients who built their entire business on referrals. Until they dried up, then they had nothing to rely on, and that's a scary place to be in. The quality of the referral also depends on the quality of the clients. Bigger clients provide bigger opportunities. Smaller ones, not so much. Therefore, I'm putting referrals on a second of my list of client acquisition tactics. Okay, so who gets a trophy? Who gets the number one spot? And that is LinkedIn content and strategic engagement. What are the pros of this? Over time, consistently posting content that reaches, reads, and shifts the mindset of your ideal customer prospects positions you as a leader in your marketplace. It builds trust while you sleep. The number of eyeballs from your ideal customer prospects that can see your posts 24 hours a day means your trust is growing each and every hour. Your posts reach decision makers directly. It costs zero to create LinkedIn posts, but of course it takes time and effort. It scales authority and inbound at the same time. And now we know the latest LinkedIn algorithm changes. Your post stay up to 4 days in the feed. It means that an excellent post that you've posted last week could still be seen to the eyeballs of your ideal customer prospects 4 days later. What is this tactic best for? It's best for M&E contractors or those that supply the M&E sector who want to generate inbound leads without relying on other outdated and ineffective methods. It's ideal for B2B firms selling high trust services. After all, it's more than likely that your ideal customer prospects are reading and lurking on LinkedIn day after day. What are the cons? It requires consistency, not a post once and done strategy, and a haphazard way will only lead you to poor results. You need to take LinkedIn as seriously, if not more, than any other tactic or channel you're working on. You need a clear message to attract the right people. You need to be bold with your market observations. You can't be scared to be vulnerable. After all, it's your own unique story which builds audiences. If you can build narratives around your own personal experiences, on-site experiences, industry observations, and really dial into the macro issues that are impacting Tier 1 and principal contractors on a day-to-day basis, be that regulation, legislation, Building Safety Act, the economy, wine regulations, difficulties in training apprenticeships, all the macro factors which impact whether a Tier 1 contractor or principal contractor will deal with you as an M&E contractor or supplier. If you can really reach all those concepts and create a system in place that can generate content that reaches them day after day, and you're in a winning state of mind. And more importantly, you're in a winning business mindset. So what's my experience with this tactic? This is what I see working better than anything else right now. You don't need 10,000 followers. You just need 2 to 3 decision makers to see your right post at the right time. Even with a small audience, if you're posting consistently and saying something that adds value, your content works for you round the whole clock. Unlike events or email campaigns, all the other tactics mentioned, LinkedIn builds trust that sticks. It's how I generated inbound interest today in my services. And it's what I recommend to every M&E supplier and contractor in the marketplace today. If you want to grow sustainably, have a solid line of project inquiries that come your way, then I heavily recommend spending time cracking on with a no-nonsense LinkedIn plan. If you haven't got the time for it, because let's face it, who has when you're going 9 to 5 from site to site? And that's exactly what I'm here for. That's why I place LinkedIn as number one in the most effective and impactful client acquisition tactic. If you need help getting started with LinkedIn, or if you need help following a no-nonsense 90-day LinkedIn plan that can help you generate leads and help grow your audience and your authority in the sector so that you're left with being seen as a trusted go-to guide for M&E installations, then please click the link below and let's set up a trust building workshop together. Thanks for watching.